Hello. The purpose of this video is to highlight the works and life of who I believe to be a very underappreciated scientist, Dr. Chien-Shiung Wu. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. It says right here on the screen, the First Lady of Physics. How could someone with a title like that be underrated or underappreciated? Well, I'll tell you why in the course of this video, so keep watching. Dr. Wu made significant contributions to the field of physics and was a pioneer for women in STEM, specifically in nuclear science. Dr. Wu was born in a small town outside Shanghai in 1912. At this time, women did not typically receive a formal education, let alone a higher education. But her father was very passionate about it, actually started a school where her mother was a teacher and encouraged her to attend. It was there that she fell in love with learning, like most great scientists do, and she went on to National Central University in China, which is now Southeast University. After conducting research at a few other colleges in China, she was encouraged by a mentor to pursue a graduate degree in the United States, and she enrolled at UC Berkeley in the nuclear physics department. In her time there, she conducted important research that she actually wouldn't recognize the true value of until much later. She also had the opportunity to work under Dr. Ernest Lawrence, who won a Nobel Prize and was one of the world's leading physicists at the time. On top of that, she met her future husband in the physics department there. After completing her PhD, she was unable to find a university research position and had to take an instructor position at Smith College before quickly moving to Princeton. In a time where she was very frustrated by the fact that her position involved teaching only, Dr. Wu was offered the opportunity to work on the Manhattan Project in a lab at Columbia University. For those unfamiliar, the Manhattan Project was the US government's secret initiative during World War II to develop an atomic bomb, and physicists from around the world were getting involved in this race to create the weapon. Numerous colleagues from UC Berkeley, including J. Robert Oppenheimer, were already working on the project and suggested her. She worked on a team that used gaseous diffusion to separate uranium into isotopes U-235 and U-238. This finding significantly increased the amount of uranium that could be produced at one time, which was one of the largest holdups to the project in general. The same research also helped with the improvement of Geiger counters, which detect radiation, and it contributed further to this Manhattan Project research and to the future of the nuclear industry. While working on this part of the project, an unpublished paper Wu had written at Berkeley, as I mentioned earlier, actually helped solve an issue across the country with the world's first nuclear reactor. After World War II, Wu's focus went back to the study of beta decay, a topic she said would always hold a special place in her heart. Beta decay was the theory first put forth by Enrico Fermi. He suggested the existence of a type of radioactive decay where in an unstable nucleus, meaning one with too many protons or neutrons and excess energy, a proton or neutron could actually be transformed into the other without changing the mass number. This decay would also result in the emission of a neutrino or an antineutrino, which were only suggested to exist a few years prior. The initial experiments by other experimenters attempting to prove Fermi's theory actually contradicted it. Dr. Wu set out to perform her own experimentation, identified a clear error in the previous procedures, and she not only supported the beta decay theory, but provided evidence of exactly how it worked. His work with beta decay caught the attention of Columbia colleagues Drs. Sung-Dao Lee and Chen-Ning Yang. They theorized that there was no actual evidence that the law of conservation of parity applied during beta decay. So let's give some background here. Let me first explain the law of parity conservation in terms of a tangible object like this clock. The law would state that if you built a clock in the mirror image, for example, the one on the left being the original clock, the one on the right being its mirror image, it would behave exactly the same way, with only difference being that the left and right would be reversed. So in this case, the figure on the left would abide by the parity law and the figure on the right would not, because the hands in the left operate in opposite directions in terms of left and right, and on the right operate in the same direction. An even more simplified example of this would be a particle moving with both a vertical and horizontal component. For this object to abide by the parity law, the mirrored version of this particle would have the opposite sign on the horizontal component, but have the same exact vertical component. In a spatial sense, you could think of this as the reversed sign of one coordinate in 2D, or in 3D, it would be the reverse sign of all coordinates. Now let's bring this back to Dr. Wu. In terms of atomic interactions, the same explanation as prior would apply, that the behavior of mirrored atoms should be the same, with left and right just being interchanged. At the time of the experiment, the law was proven for most types of interactions and was widely accepted in the field. So when Li and Yang wanted to challenge this idea, in the case of beta decay, they turned to Dr. Wu. With her background in experimentation, Dr. Wu designed a custom procedure using radioactive cobalt in ideal conditions for observation. As you can see in the image, she applied a magnetic field in order to align the spin axes. The cobalt was also cryogenically cooled to increase stability. Along with the beta decay products, when the cobalt isotope decays into nickel, there are gamma rays emitted. So with that background information, Dr. Wu compared the rates of emission of the beta decay electrons and the gamma rays relative to the spin. At the time, gamma rays were already shown to abide by the parity law. So, if the emission rates of the electrons and gamma rays were comparable regardless of spin direction, the parity law would be held true. This is shown in the left part of the figure you see. However, as you see on the right, Dr. Wu found that the emission direction did depend on the spin, that the mirror images did not behave the same way. And this supported that theory that the law of parity conservation does not hold true in such reactions, and at the time it shocked the physics community. This experiment also led to a more general trend to challenge accepted laws that led to significant discoveries in the characterization of elementary particles, especially in regards to symmetry. So here's where we come back to that underappreciated idea I was talking about. Though Wu received recognition for her work from other physicists, both Dr. Li and Dr. Yang received the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1957 for their theory, while Dr. Wu was not acknowledged for her experiment that was crucial in actually proving it. However, her finding did later become what was known as the Wu experiment in many textbooks. I want to take a moment to acknowledge some of the recognitions that Dr. Wu did receive. She was the first woman to be awarded an honorary doctorate from Princeton, and she also received honorary degrees from Harvard and Yale, among other schools. She also received the Achievement Award from the American Association of University Women in 1960. Most of the recognition and awards she received, though, occurred many years after her most significant work. For example, she won the Scientist of the Year Award from the Industrial Research Magazine in 1974, the Tom W. Bonner Prize in Nuclear Physics from the American Physical Society in 1975, and the National Medal of Science in 1975. Perhaps my favorite and maybe the greatest honor on this list, she is the first living scientist to have an asteroid named after her. Many years after taking a permanent position at Columbia, Dr. Wu also contributed to the biomedical field in numerous ways. She mainly performed research to better understand multiple diseases, including sickle cell. Specifically, she observed the deformation of hemoglobin that actually causes the disease. In her later life, Wu became a more outspoken advocate for human rights in China and put a lot of effort into encouraging young women to pursue STEM careers. She also encouraged universities and governments to teach STEM to all children, regardless of gender or social standing. I believe that Dr. Wu's numerous accomplishments, and even more so her devotion to the field of physics, should inspire anyone, especially with an interest in experimentation. One additional interesting fact about Dr. Wu is that when she passed away in 1997, her ashes were buried in the courtyard of the school she attended as a child, and a statue was built in her honor. So of all the prestigious universities and organizations that she was involved with, I think it's very special that she will forever lie at the school her father founded, where her passion for learning was just first ignited. It is well documented that many of Wu's colleagues in the world of physics had high praise for her. One that stood out to me was from Dr. Herwig Schapper, director of CERN, the particle collider. He said very simply, if the experiment was done by Wu, it must be correct. Another colleague, Maurice Goldhaber, said at her retirement ceremony that people avoid doing experiments in beta decay simply because they know that Wu will do a better job than anybody. Dr. Wu was the first female physics instructor at Princeton, the first female president of the American Physicist Society, and the only known Chinese person to have contributed to the Manhattan Project. Though many physics colleagues recognize Wu for her contributions, she is still largely underappreciated by the public in her time. Even with all the honors she's received since, and the title the First Lady of Physics, she is still little known today and deserves significantly more recognition. So I hope you learned something about her in this video, but I hope even more that you will do your own research into Dr. Wu's life and works. There are many other scientists who haven't even received this level of recognition, so if you know of any other physicists who you feel deserve more appreciation for their work, leave a comment below this video. Thanks for watching.